Thirsty? For most of us, the solution is this simple. Clean, safe, instant. But what if it wasn't? Imagine you've been born in the year 5000 BC. There are no taps, no bottles, no wells. But the thirst is the same. Your life, every single day, revolves around one critical question: where will you find water that won't kill you? This isn't just about being thirsty. Finding water in the Neolithic period was a life-or-death gamble. Every potential source came with its own set of dangers. Your most obvious choice is a river or a lake. It's the largest source of water you can see for miles. You'd approach cautiously, scanning the banks. Why the caution? Because water sources were the hunting grounds for the era's top predators. Every sip meant exposing yourself to attack. But the biggest threat was the one you couldn't see. The water itself. Forget parasites and pollution as we know them. We're talking about animal waste, rotting vegetation, and countless unknown bacteria. A single drink from the wrong part of the river could lead to sickness so severe, it was a death sentence. To your 5000 BC brain, it would seem like an evil spirit in the water. So what did you do? You learned to read the water. You'd look for faster flowing sections, where the water was clearer and more oxygenated. You would avoid stagnant pools at all costs. But what if there was no river? Or a drought had dried it up? This is where human cleverness comes in. You became a master of harvesting rainwater. It was the purest water you could get. You'd use large leaves or natural rock basins to collect every precious drop. You might even dig a small pit, a soakage well, near a water source, letting the ground itself act as a crude filter. But finding water is only half the battle. You can't stay by the river forever. You need to carry it. Animal skins, bladders from a hunt, could be cleaned and sealed to create the world's first canteens. Gourds, once dried, made for lightweight, effective containers. But the single greatest innovation for your life was this: pottery. For the first time, you had a durable, reliable container to store and protect water from contamination. And even more importantly, a clay pot allowed you to do something revolutionary. You could boil it. By heating water over a fire, you could kill the invisible killers within. You wouldn't know it was bacteria you were killing. You would just know that people who drank from the warm pot got sick less often. It was the first step towards true water purification. So the next time you turn on the tap, remember your 5000 BC ancestor. For them, a simple drink of water wasn't a convenience. It was a daily struggle of intellect, courage, and ingenuity, fought on the edge of survival. If you think finding water was hard, wait until you see what they had to hunt and gather just to eat. That's in the next video of our series, Surviving 5000 BC. Subscribe channel to watch it now. And don't forget to like and hit the bell so you don't miss our journey into the past.
You found a source of clean water. You have survived day one. But the celebration is short-lived, replaced by a new, gnawing feeling in your stomach: hunger. The real work begins now. How will you find the thousands of calories needed to survive another day in 5000 BC? Your first and most constant strategy is foraging. The landscape is your grocery store, but it's one where most of the food is trying to kill you. You'd search for familiar berries, nuts, and roots your ancestors taught you to recognize. But a simple mistake, choosing the wrong color berry or a misidentified mushroom, could be your last. Every meal gathered this way is a gamble against poison. Foraging provides scraps, but to truly survive, you need protein. You need to hunt. And that means facing the megafauna of the Neolithic world with nothing but sharpened stone and wood. Your primary tools are the stone-tipped spear and the atlatl, a spear thrower that gives you life-saving distance and power. But the beasts you hunt are massive, the aurochs, a wild bull twice the size of modern cattle, and ferocious wild boars with deadly tusks. Every hunt is a battle for your life, a high-risk, high-reward venture where one mistake means being gored or trampled. Many hunters leave and never return. For tens of thousands of years, this was the cycle, the desperate search for plants, the terrifying hunt. But then, somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, the single greatest revolution in human history began. A game changer that would create the modern world. It wasn't a king or a warrior that changed the world. It was a simple observation, a seed dropped by accident, sprouting into a plant. This was the dawn of farming. Humans began to intentionally plant the first crops, like einkorn, wheat, and barley. At the same time, they began taming and domesticating the most docile animals, like wild goats and sheep, for a reliable source of meat and milk. This was the beginning of the end of the constant struggle. For the first time, you had a small measure of control over your food supply. It meant you could stay in one place, build a permanent home, and plan for the future. Your belly is full. But as night falls, a cold wind blows, and the predators of the dark begin their own hunt. You have food and water, but you are still exposed. Your next great challenge is finding shelter.
You have water, your stomach is full. But as the sun sets, a deep, primal fear takes over. The temperature drops, the wind picks up, and the sounds of the night begin. You are exposed, without protection. You are just another easy meal for the predators that stalk the darkness. Your next great struggle is for the most basic of all comforts, shelter. What are your options? The easiest choice is to find what nature has already built. You would search for a cave or a deep rock overhang. This provides immediate, sturdy protection from wind and rain, but caves are prime real estate. You might find it's already home to a cave bear or a pack of wolves. Even if it's empty, it's damp, dark. And you can't always find one where you need it, so you learn to build. Your first attempts are temporary and crude. You might construct a simple lean-to, a slanted wall of branches, and large leaves propped against a rock face to block the wind. Or you might dig a pit in the earth, covering it with animal hides to create an insulated space just large enough to crawl into. These shelters could save your life for a night. But they offer little real security against a determined predator or a severe storm. The real change came when you stopped wandering. The agricultural revolution we saw in the last episode meant you were tied to your land. You needed a home, a permanent one. This sparked a revolution in architecture. You begin building the first true houses. The most common technique was wattle and daub. You would weave a lattice of flexible branches together, like a basket, to create walls. Then, you'd cover this wattle with daub, a sticky mixture of wet soil, clay, sand, and straw. When it dried, it created hard, insulated walls. You'd top it with a thick, thatched roof of reeds or straw to keep out the rain. These weren't just shelters, they were homes. For the first time, you had a dedicated space to live, to raise a family, to store food, and to be safe. Several of these homes together formed the first villages, creating a community that could defend itself. You are now warm and safe inside the walls of your own home, a fire crackling in the hearth. But to build this home, to farm your land, to hunt with greater success, you need better tools. The age of simple sharpened stones is coming to an end. The next great leap for humanity will be a revolution in technology.
You have a home, a reliable source of food and fresh water. You are surviving, but survival is exhausting. Every task, from cutting meat to chopping wood for a fire, is a monumental struggle with your bare hands or crude, sharpened rocks. A simple cut from a jagged rock can get infected and kill you. To truly advance, you don't just need to be stronger, you need to be smarter. This is the story of how our ancestors, with nothing but the materials around them, launched the first great technological revolution. It all begins with a simple yet brilliant discovery. Not all rocks are created equal. You learn to seek out specific types: flint, chert, and the black, volcanic glass called obsidian. These stones are special. When struck correctly, they fracture with a predictable, conchoidal pattern, creating an edge sharper than a modern steel scalpel. The technique of flint knapping becomes the most important skill of the Stone Age. There were two main methods. The first is percussion knapping, striking a coarse stone with a hammer stone to flake off large, useful pieces. This is for making the rough shapes of hand axes and choppers. But for finer work, you develop pressure flaking. Using a piece of antler or bone, you apply precise pressure to the edge of a flake, pressing off tiny, controlled slivers to create razor-sharp arrowheads, delicate sewing needles from bone, and sharp barons for carving. From this single material, you create an entire toolkit. A sharp flint point by itself is useful, but the real genius was in combining technologies. You realize a flint point attached to a stick becomes a spear, a tool that gives you a life-saving distance from your prey. But how do you attach it? First, you invent cordage, the world's first rope. You learn to harvest plant fibers, like nettles, or process animal sinew, twisting them together to create incredibly strong string. But you need more. You need glue. Through countless experiments, you discover that by heating the bark of a birch tree in a low-oxygen environment, it produces a sticky, black, waterproof tar. This birch bark tar is humanity's first complex adhesive. By combining the flint point, the wooden shaft, the cordage binding, and the birch tar adhesive, you create a composite tool, a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering. This new way of thinking leads to the atlatl, or spear thrower. This simple device, a stick with a hook at the end, acts as a lever, an extension of the human arm. It dramatically increases the speed and power of a thrown spear, allowing it to hit with enough force to pierce the thick hide of the largest prey. It was a weapon so effective it dominated hunting for thousands of years. This technological boom wasn't just for hunting. It transformed daily life. You needed better ways to gather and store the food you were now farming. Using your new cordage skills, you begin weaving. You create strong, lightweight baskets from reeds, allowing you to gather more berries and nuts than you could ever carry in your hands. You weave long nets, which you use in rivers and lakes to catch fish in massive quantities. You even build the first simple looms, allowing you to weave coarse cloth from flax and wool, a massive improvement over stiff animal hides for clothing. You needed to carry water and store grain, so you moved beyond simple clay pots. You invented the potter's wheel, not for transportation, but as a rotating platform that allowed you to craft lighter, stronger, and more symmetrical pottery faster than ever before. You also mastered firing. You learned to build early kilns, pits in the ground that could control airflow and reach higher, more consistent temperatures, turning soft clay into hard, waterproof ceramic, perfect for long-term storage and cooking. Your community is growing. You need to build larger structures, clear more land, and move heavier objects than a single person can lift. You domesticate dogs not just for hunting, but for transport. You build the first travois, to long poles hitched to a dog, allowing you to drag heavy loads of firewood or meat back to the village. The greatest challenge is moving massive stones for building ritual sites or communal tombs. You learn to use teamwork, levers, and perhaps the most important invention for heavy lifting, wooden rollers. By felling trees and placing them under a massive stone, a large team of people could roll a multi-ton monolith across the landscape. This was the birth of large-scale construction and monumental engineering. These weren't just tools, they were the engines of civilization. From the razor-sharp edge of a flint flake grew the concepts of physics, engineering, and chemistry. With these inventions, You are no longer just surviving the world, you are beginning to shape it, moving from a single rock in your hand to moving mountains as a community.